My name is Deanne Chapman. I'm the State Director for Alaska Environment and Alaska Environment Research and Policy Center. And today we're going to be talking about weatherization and efficiency. We sometimes say that the cleanest renewable energy is the energy that we never use, aka efficiency. So I'm really glad that we're taking the time to talk about this evening. We've got our colder seasons quickly approaching. I've got lots of yellow leaves outside my window, and there's definitely snow up on the peaks. So we're all about to start using more energy. And the information that we're going to cover today, we'll talk about how to reduce that increase in energy, which will both end up saving you money, as well as help protect our environment. With us today, we have Colleen Fisk, who is the Energy Education Director with REAP, the Renewable Energy Alaska Project, which is dedicated to increasing the development of renewable energy and energy efficiency in Alaska. And then Ethan Stoops, who's the Program Information Manager at the Research and Rural Development Department at the Alaska Housing Finance Corporation. AHFC is going to be administering the rebate programs for heat pumps, electrification, energy efficiency retrofits, and weatherization programs that are going to come in from the Inflation Reduction Act. So the way that this will work is Colleen is going to take some time to cover some basics on efficiency and weatherization. Ethan will discuss the upcoming rebate programs, which will help folks pay for some of the bigger retrofits on their homes. And then I'll wrap it up with some discussion on stuff that y'all can do yourself. And then there will be some time at the end for questions. So please put them in the chat or the Q&A box. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Colleen to get started.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here tonight. I hope it was nice. I don't know if you guys caught some of us. We were talking about the nice fall weather. I live outside Wasilla, and we had a kind of a nice sunny day today. I am going to make sure I have my chat window pulled up here so I can try to keep an eye on that as we go. If I miss something there, of course, we can get it at the end as well, but hopefully I'll be able to kind of set this up for Ethan, Deanne to be able to share out some more information, but kind of get you started on some resources and really easy things that you can do to save energy and do some weatherization. And of course, I want to start out with a land acknowledgement. So like I said, I live outside of Wasilla, which is also known as Betna or Between the Lakes. But the REAP staff live and work on Dena'ina, Elnana, Otnanen, and Lincoln Ani, and we work statewide. And especially as I think about energy resources, I want to be conscious and respectful of people who have been here for thousands of years who have already been stewarding these resources and continue to do so. So I really want to start out with that. And in the intro there, talked about I guess I could step back for a second and talk a little bit more about myself as well. So I am the education director at REAP, and that was a great intro of our mission there, looking at efficiency and renewables. And a lot of my work is actually on this efficiency education through this program called AK Energy Smart, which is funded through the Alaska Housing Finance Corporation. So I do a lot of K through 12 outreach, teacher trainings, and then public education like this that does efficiency. Of course, we also do renewable energy education, but a lot of my work is on that efficiency side of things. So just a quick recap on, or review maybe, for conservation and efficiency is that efficiency is using less energy, and that can be behavior choices, which sometimes people specify that as conservation, versus improved technology and materials, which sometimes people specify as efficiency. So sometimes people talk about them kind of interchangeably, or sometimes they talk about them as being two different things in terms of behavior versus technology or materials. But overall, it's just all about steps that individuals, communities, societies, really like at any level, can take to use less energy. And so today, of course, we're going to be focusing on some of the things that you can do individually within your own home. But, there's also, of course, other ways we can think about this at different levels. And as she said there at the beginning, efficiency is definitely that's our first fuel, right? The cheapest and lowest carbon fuel that you can use is the fuel that you never have to use, right? So the less that we can use whatever the impacts from any energy source, we can reduce that impact by using less energy and less resources. And like, I don't have any videos up or anything. Let's see, can't see if people are nodding along. I'm just going to assume so. Everyone can hear me. Okay. Keep an eye on the chat here. All right. So the first resource that I want to share is this energy saving tips for Alaskans. And so this is a booklet that you can download from either REAP's website or HFC's website that has a lot of these tips that I'm going to share, but also, of course, goes into more detail. And at the back, it also has an energy assessment checklist. You can download the checklist separately from the AK Energy Smart website. And I'll make sure I get these links into the chat once I'm done talking. There's just a few here that I shared for you guys to be able to access and use. And this is a really great resource that AHFC puts out that I always share with everybody. It's free to download and use. Us and HFC hand out a lot of these copies that you can actually use and share. So great resource, great way for you to get started if you are not already familiar with that. So I do want to ask you guys really quick, for thinking about efficiency and our energy use, what is the #1 energy cost for Alaskans? And if you can throw your guess into the chat, that would be great. What do you think your #1 energy cost is for Alaskans? Okay, see home heating from Greg. Yep, heat. Like maybe the chat's just going to host and panelists. That's okay. I don't know if you can change that. Okay, heat your car is another guess. Home heating, yep. So a lot of you have got it right on. It's that heating. Okay, so heating is our biggest energy cost. I should have specified the home energy heating. We did the data where I have it from wasn't actually looking at the car. It was looking at your home. Within your home, what are those largest costs? So heating is by far the largest cost. And so this is from the AHFC's 2018 Housing Needs Assessment. And so you can see there that top line in whatever region of the state that you are in, it is, of course, going to be heating. So I'm going to talk about some tips for heating. I'm also going to touch on water heating and appliances as well. Some tips for that, for being able to save energy. And a lot of these, of course, overlap with weatherization as well. I'm going to talk about that as we go along. So the first one for heating, okay, some big ones is check and unblock air vents, radiators, registers, right? So don't have those blocked. Make sure you can have your fireplace sealed and other holes when not in use. Of course, the very important caveat to this is that you don't want to seal anything that is an air return, right? So nothing that's supposed to be providing ventilation should be covered up. But anything that isn't supposed to be providing ventilation, you want to be able to close that up as much as possible. And that's a really good weatherization as well. And so if you have a professional, tune your heating system. So it's usually recommended every 1 or 2 years to be able to do that, to make sure you catch any issues before they happen. And that can really help improve your efficiency of it as well. And replace systems generally older than 15 years is kind of the rule of thumb. But of course, everybody's situation is going to be different. So I love this photo. This is actually from another I cannot take credit for this photo. Someone else from HFC shared this with me, but I do love that as can't make sure you don't have those bunnies blocking your vents, as we all do. Okay, so thermostats, important part for heating. So kind of the general recommendation is 62 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit in the winter and turn it off when it's warm enough outside in the summer. I think some of us may have had our heat on a little bit more this summer than normal, at least in my region where I live. But the big thing here is that every degree that you lower it, you can save 2% on your heating bill. So no matter where that heating source is, whether it's like natural gas or heating oil or wood or whatever that is, you can save 2% of that resource for every degree that you lower it. And if you can, program it, because then you don't have to try to remember to set it back. They say like 2 hours before bed, and then set it to increase just before you wake. Set back when nobody is home. So like I have kind of a separate building for my office, so mine's kind of opposite. I have it go up when I'm going to be here, and then down when I am not going to be here. So whatever it is that you're using that space, if you're not going to be there, turn it down. It can really save a lot of money and resources. That's the biggest one. So the next one is insulation air sealing, which has more to do with that weatherization. And so weatherization, thinking about how do we help prevent, especially if there's bad weather and we want to be able to prevent, our heat from leaving our home, if we want to protect against those like cold winds or those wet rains, right? These are some really good ways that when you want to think about this insulation and air sealing it really overlaps a lot with weatherization. And so this is an image from the Energy Star, and it just shows some areas where heat is moving in or out of your house. And so you can see a lot of times it's going out. This is a little bit of a busy diagram, but just kind of a way of thinking about that insulation and air sealing. And so some really big tips that you can do for insulation and air sealing is identify those major air leaks. And I will say I'm going to go through this a little bit quickly. I'm not going to go into too much detail about how to do each of these things, so I don't want to take too much away from the actual DIY weatherization at the end. But these are some things to kind of get you started in thinking about it. So identifying those major air leaks, you can caulk cracks and gaps. Again, anywhere where there's not supposed to be there, don't want to block any air that is supposed to be coming in. Doors, replace thresholds or attach sweeps. When I bought my first house, I learned how to do this for the first time, to replace those thresholds. I hadn't done it before, and so it's pretty straightforward, fortunately. You can repair and insulate. You don't always have to, replace windows, okay, unless you have like only single pane windows in your house. Generally, there are a lot of ways that you can actually repair and insulate them where you don't have to do that huge cost of window replacement. And one that I found was an interesting one is actually latch. So if you have a window that like opens and has a latch on it, if you make sure that latch is closed, then that actually helps make sure that it's pulled in and has a tighter seal on that window as well. That's something I start doing around this time of year, is make sure those are actually all latched down and sealed, as opposed to the summertime when I'm opening them up all the time. And installing efficient exhaust fans. And so you may have heard of things like HRVs, which are the heat recovery ventilators, but also exhaust fans like you see in your bathrooms. You can actually replace those with really efficient, and really, they make them pretty quiet nowadays as well, where you can use those exhaust fans and install those. And so then you're still having good airflow, but that aren't using as much energy and are much quieter. Okay, so I know that was a quick one, but I want to make sure I leave that DIY to the end there. And so I also want to set this up. So there are some things that, you may not necessarily be able to do. Maybe you have bigger issues, or maybe you have a house that's new to you and you really don't know what is going on with the house. And so this is where you can get a contractor. And you generally, it's really nice. You can get an energy rating, and then they can make recommendations, and then you can pick a contractor who can use those, where you can apply those recommendations with a contractor. And so a contractor can do things like identify existing insulation R values, inspect those vapor barriers, so that like plastic sheeting with your insulation and your walls. Okay, so that's another good weatherization one. Make sure that their weather's not getting into your insulation. And they can really evaluate and improve your attic and foundation insulation. They can do combustion safety testing, could install a heat pump, right? Not sure where everybody's calling in from, but heat pump might be right for you in your area. And they can help you identify whether that's going to be a good idea or not. But again, energy rating if you can first. Ethan's going to talk a little bit more about that as well. Okay, so that was the quick on the heating. Well, I haven't gone too fast yet for everybody. Okay. So, all right. Looking at our domestic hot water, there's going to be a few similar recommendations here, right? Turning down the heat, again, is going to save huge amounts of energy. Oftentimes it's set to a really hot setting. Maybe you have yours set at like 140 degrees Fahrenheit is kind of typical. But if you're able to, turning it down to 120, and no lower, definitely no lower than 120, but down to that 120 degrees Fahrenheit, that can save that 6 to 10% on your energy bill from that 20 degrees difference. And generally, the only time I've seen that people do not recommend turning it down to 100, again, never lower than that. But if you have a dishwasher that doesn't have like if you want to do a sanitized cycle and it doesn't heat up the water extra for you, potentially you might not want to turn it down. But generally, it's recommended to go down to that 120, and that can also help reduce any scalding. Like I was using a hot water in a cafe in Girdwood last week, and I just about scalded myself. I kind of wanted to try to find the manager and turn down their hot water, save energy. Didn't quite find that person. So definitely a good idea. Another thing when you're thinking about water, of course, is not letting, things like, I feel like the don't let your water run while you're brushing your teeth. It's like this commercial that we've all seen for the last 40 or 50 years. Still a good recommendation, right? But fixing those leaky faucets and running toilets can also help save that water, because it takes energy, of course, to pump and move that water. Same thing with installing low flow shower heads, low flow aerators on faucets. And if it's recommended by the manufacturer, you can also add like a blanket to your older water heater to help reduce the heat loss from that. And upgrade or downsize your water heater. Oftentimes water heaters are oversized for what you necessarily need, and other systems are starting to get more efficient. So if you don't have a lot of water usage, maybe you've had some family members move out, don't need as much anymore, like the instant hot water heaters can be a lot more efficient as well, and have gotten pretty good, keep improving over the years. Okay. So last section is on electricity. How am I doing on time? Okay, I'm already at 15 minutes. Okay, I'll keep moving to make sure I give Ethan time to chat too. Don't take up all the time. So lighting is an easy one. That's a big part of our electricity. So of course, things like turning off the lights, switching to more efficient lighting, using those LEDs, Energy Star fixtures and lamps when you're replacing those, or if you're building new. Timers are really helpful. Sometimes occupancy sensors, but especially timers in a home. There's our incandescent versus LED. I forgot I still had that one there. Nice graphic and convince you, hopefully, that LEDs can save so much money for you if you have some bulbs you haven't switched yet. But those timers can be really helpful. All right, you can also do things like group and plug into a power strip, right? So turn it off at the end of the day, like my computer and monitor are plugged in on that, and can turn it off, turn off the TV. You don't want to feed those vampires or phantom loads, those things that are using energy when you're not using them, but they still have a little bit of energy that they're turned on. That sleep mode is really helpful. This one is becoming, with newer power adapters and chargers, they used to have more of a phantom load. So you still kind of want to keep an eye on it, but it's becoming less of an issue as they are improving. Yeah, and this is too. Growler. All right, so the timers. So like lamps when you're gone, this can be a good safety one, right? Turn it on and off. But also like tree or indoor outdoor string lights for the holidays. That's unfortunately coming up. My husband sent me a photo of way too many holiday lights in the Fred Meyer's aisle a couple weeks ago. Heat tape. Sometimes people forget their heat tape is still plugged in the summertime, but also having it turned on timer, like it doesn't necessarily have to be on at all times, maybe just overnight during the coldest times, or can have it kind of on like a 20-minute timer as well. And of course, any block heaters that you're using, turn it on so it's only comes on 2 hours before you leave, is a good one for your car too. Okay, almost done. Getting there, I promise. Get your time here, Ethan. So the Energy Star rated appliances are always great recommended. So this is a nice, efficiency when you are replacing your refrigerator, or if you're buying a new one, look for the Energy Star rated. It can make a big savings. Use your dishwasher, actually saves more energy than hand washing, and running when full also saves it. Simple things like making sure the lint is cleaned out actually saves energy. Go figure. And there's also temperature recommendations for a fridge and freezer. So it doesn't, a freezer 0 to 5 degrees Fahrenheit doesn't have to be colder than that. 36 to 38 degrees Fahrenheit for a fridge. And then you can also clean the coils. And you can check for leaks in the door seal on your refrigerator as well. Like you can put a piece of paper in it and close the door on the paper. And if the paper comes out easily, then that means that your seal maybe isn't as good on your refrigerator door. Okay, another tool here, I'll make sure I put the link in the chat on this one, is the electricity use calculator. So this is something newer on the ACAN Energy Smart website. But if you're like, what's the cost of the, if I know how much electricity something is using, I can estimate. And I know what my cost for electricity. So like where I live, it's 20 cents per kilowatt hour approximately, right? And you can put this in and calculate, and you can add several lines of items. So that's an interesting tool if you want to look at what's costing you the most amount of money, or if you want to compare costs of different things. Okay, so quick wrap up. Conservation is free, right? Like you can work on changing your behaviors, but you don't have to live in a cold, dark house, right, to be able to save energy and money. And efficiency may cost you some upfront, but it will of course save you in the long run. And you're going to hear about some of those, low cost and do it yourself weatherization ones that will also save you a lot of money as well. And also just a quick plug for, as much as possible, if you can keep track of your energy bills, whether it's like electricity or heating, or how often you're refilling your fuel tank, right? How many cords of wood are you going through, that sort of thing. That's really can be helpful for understanding how much you're using and spending on energy. You can even get these things like electricity monitors that a lot of utilities lend out, HFC lends out. And then you can get like a fridge, freezer, or thermometer, make sure your temperature is within range. So it's a lot of ways to save money, reduce our energy use, and reduce our impact on the environment. Okay, thanks. There is my contact. Hopefully I didn't take too much of Ethan's time here. I'm going to throw some links in the chat. Stop my share.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Colleen. That last one with the being able to calculate the savings seems like such a helpful calculator as well. Cool. I'll hand it over to Ethan now. And thank you so much, Colleen.
You see in the screen coming through? Perfect. Okay. So I'm Ethan Stoops, work for the Research and Rural Development Department at Alaska Housing Finance Corporation. Appreciate Deanna for setting this up, and Colleen for that great presentation before. So here at the Research and Rural Development Department, we do a lot of the sustainable building and energy efficiency programs for AHFC. That includes weatherization, supplemental housing, the state energy program. We run the home energy rebate rating system, building codes, all that kind of stuff. So we will be administering these 2 home rebate programs that are coming out from the Department of Energy, passed through the Inflation Reduction Act that was signed in 2022, through DOE, through their State and Community Energy Programs Office. Okay, so let's get into it. So timeline, we'll start with this first. This is a little bit old. We're actually past the full program guidance. Those were issued at the end of July. So now what we're in is the states crafting their programs based on those guidelines. We're in the process of applying for some early administration funds that'll help us train new graders, hire staff, modify our home energy rating software, bring it in line with the DOE guidance, outreach, and consumer education. So we're working on ours, hoping to get it in, go through the DOE review process, probably gonna be a lot of back and forth. Hoping to have these programs live next summer, hopefully earlier summer, but hopefully no later than end of summer, before the next heating season. So that's kind of the timeline for these programs. And now we can jump into, oh, that's right. Before we do this, these are income, both of these programs are income dependent programs. So they have limits to them, area median income limits. Most of the rebates amount are 100% at 80% median income. So I've included that here. One of them goes up to 150%, and then it's capped. That's the highest you can go. The other one is just over 80%. You get half of the benefits. So basically, Alaska median family income for family 4 is 106,000. You can see kind of where it is for that 80% median, which is the dividing line for these programs, and then 150% is like 160,000. One of the things we want to ask DOE is if we can use either the state or like a census tract or municipalities income limits. So whichever one's higher, which allows us to grab more people. If you go to HUD.gov, and I'll throw this in the chat too, you can look at it, per borough, per municipality, kind of the different ways to have it broken out there. So the first one, the home efficiency rebate program. This one's going to be the most similar to our state's efficiency rebate program, which was from 2008 to 2016. What it's going to do, you're going to begin with a home energy assessment from a home energy rater. I'll go into that in a second, kind of what that looks like. But they're going to give you a home energy rating and some improvement options. You're going to try to hit these models here. So you get different levels of savings depending on both your income and the level of savings you get. It's a little complicated. You've got one level at the 20 to 35% savings, one level at 35% or more. So you can kind of see you've got that single family, that's the over 80%, and then you've got the single family LMI, that's the under 80%, where your rebate is doubled. There's also a component of this that's for multifamily, so we don't want to leave renters out. Renters are complicated for these programs. They're harder to reach. Obviously, if you're a renter, you can't make a lot of these improvements yourself. You got to work with your landlord. So there's a lot of restrictions in the DOE guidelines of what's required of landlords to enter the program. So we're kind of working through that and figuring out the best way so we can both make it enticing for landlords and beneficial for renters and tenants. So that's a big part of what we're working through and hoping to design for the state. And you can see that, 2,000 per dwelling, 4,000. This is kind of designed for other states that have big multifamilies. We don't have too many of those here, which is another reason we want to hopefully be able to adjust and give us some flexibility. And I want to jump into, so that process starts with a home energy rating from a home energy rater. Home energy raters are certified, approved by AHFC to work with our program, to work with our energy modeling software. First thing you're going to get after they come to your house, they're going to do a blower door test. They're going to check your insulation. A lot of things that Colleen mentioned. They're going to see what the status of your house is, how energy efficient it is, how leaky it is, and then give you a report at the end. And that's going to end with an improvement options report. So one of the things it includes, you can see it gives you the breakdown of costs per year, how all the components of your house impact your projected annual energy costs. If you got renewables, those will be shown on there too. This is on the 5-star plus, it's a 5-star plus home on our 6-star rating. Another thing we've got to change, if you went through the program before, or if you've had one of these, it's a star rating. You get points that lead to different levels. And obviously this is a percentage savings that this new program is going to have. So we've got to adjust to that and update our software. Second part, you're going to get energy costs and features. So this is going to show you, your floor insulation, your wall insulation, your heating system. Some of this you'll know, some of this it's good to have, how efficient your space heating system is, how efficient your cooling system is, your window value, all that kind of stuff. What your air leakage is, how many air changes you have. So this is good information if you don't have it. If you bought a house and you're not familiar with the heating system, the insulation, any of that stuff. And then the third part, and this is where it comes into the rebate program, you're going to get an energy efficiency improvement options report. This is going to list, a variety of improvement options, it's going to give you a approximate annual savings for those, break-even cost, so that's how much the improvement might cost, or where it would start making money. So if it's less than that, you're definitely making money. If it's more, may not be the best option. This has rating points gained. We're gonna have to change that to percentage. One of the big things, if on the previous one, it was you got paid for every sort of step you went up from a 2-star to 2-star plus, 2-star plus to 3-star. This program has sort of a hard cutoff, that 20% or the above 35%. So we don't want people, shooting for 20, ending up at 17 and not being able to take advantage. So we got to work this so it works for that program. So this will change a little bit. This is an example of the way it was before. This is going to be updated and changed, but it still shows the important part. It's going to show you your recommended options in order from most cost effective down to least cost effective. That's pretty much it for that one. See the second part. So the other part of this, that was the home efficiency upgrades. We've also got home electrification and appliance rebates. These are a little different in that they're designed to be point of sale. So with the last one, you get your home energy rating, you do your improvements, you get a follow-up energy rating. They let you know, you achieved your 20%, your 35%. You send your stuff in, you get a rebate in the mail. That's how it works for the last one. It's probably how it's going to work for this one. For these rebates, these specific ones, these are point of sale ones. So you get income verified, you go through a portal, which will be designed and be customer facing. You get income verified, you'll get QR code or something. We're kind of waiting on DOE to see if they're going to work on something sort of on a national level for this, or if we have to figure it out for the state. And then you're going to go to an appliance center or to a contractor with that, and then you should get that money right off the top. So a little easier because you don't have to come up with all the money up front. Basically for this one, you've got 100% of these costs are for the 80% or less AMI. If you're in the 50%, 80% to 150%, you're only going to get half of these. So the electric load service center, that'd be $2,000 if you were in the 80 to 150. And if you're over 150, unfortunately, you can't apply for these. Some of the stuff like the electrical wiring upgrades, the electrical service center upgrades, if you're looking to do solar, if you're looking to do EV, these are excellent things to get done and get a little money back on that. Then you've got some of the appliances, heat pump clothes dryers, heating and cooling, heat pump water heaters, electric ranges, stovetop. So all those appliance rebates are in here. There is a cap on this, 14,000. If you add all these up in your LMI, I think it's like 19,000. So you can't quite grab all of them, even though it is a 10-year program. So you might be able to get a few of them over the years, but 14,000 is the cap. So once you get 14,000, unfortunately, that's it, and you're done. That's most of what I wanted to cover on that one. Then the other thing I wanted to bring up, now this is not, HFC is not administering these, but there are a lot of tax credits that came out of the IRA and the BIL, and most of these are available right now. So if either, maybe you don't income qualify, or you can't wait till next heating season, you want to, do some of these improvements now, a lot of these tax credits are available right now for these upgrades. You can take advantage of them, if you want to put your doors, windows, that kind of stuff. You could see how a lot of these went from 10% to 30% under the new guidelines. So, you might need to check with a tax professional before you go making these purchases just to make sure you qualify. But I just wanted to point these out, and I'll put these the link in the chat as well so people can see that. And that's it. So if you go, I'll put these links in the chat. The first one, if you go to our website, we've got a portal. You can put your email in there. As soon as we've got updates about the rebates, we'll send them out. We've got our rater list. So that's all the energy raters across the state. Contact for them. We're going to be increasing our training for those. Hopefully there'll be more in different communities across the state, and then throwing those tax saving opportunities there too. So I think I made up for the time. So I'll end it there. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay. I am going to round us out by talking a little bit about some of the DIY stuff. So give me just a second here while I share my screen. Okay. Well, can you guys see that? Okay. Does that work? Okay, perfect. So we're going to go ahead and dive in. So first off, some of your homes are going to need some of the really big stuff in order to really be efficient and well weatherized, but there are a lot of small projects that you can take on yourself right away if you're just a little bit handy. And so we're going to go ahead and dive in and discuss some of those. So these are sort of the things that we'll talk about. We'll touch back on getting your settings right, talk about tightening up your home a little bit, and then developing good habits is the last thing that we'll talk about. So first off, I will talk just a reminder on a couple of the things that Colleen talked about with settings. So lowering your thermostat is one of the best ways to save money and reduce the amount of energy that you are using. In programming your thermostat to make it so that when you are sleeping or away from your house is a great way to do this. Generally, the energy department recommends that you have about a 10-degree fluctuation for that. If you do too much more than that, it can become less efficient. So that's generally what folks recommend. And there's ones that are smart versions of this that can attach to your phone that you can update when you're away from your house to make it so you come home to a warm house. And there's also ones that are a little more old school and just go on your wall. So those are great options. I will say that if you have a heat pump or radiant floor heating, those are less suited to those fluctuations. So you're more likely to want to just do stable heating if you've got one of those kind of systems. The next thing is that in order to make it so that your thermostat works well with those fluctuations, you want to make sure that it's accurate. So you should have your thermostat be in a central part of your house that is not drafty, that doesn't get direct sunlight. It is away from furniture. If you have furniture below or in front of it, it's going to make it so your thermostat doesn't get quite the right reads and your house will end up being too warm or too cold based off of your settings. It's also worth checking and making sure that your thermostat is calibrated properly, and you can just use a thermometer inside of your house to compare and see what it says there. So next thing is the hot water heater, turn it down to 120. Colleen gave great info on why that's important. One thing there is if the calibration is wrong on that, you can also check it yourself. Just run your hot water for a couple minutes, get a glass of water. You can use a kitchen cooking thermometer in that glass of water to check and see whether it's correct. And then once you change the settings for your hot water heater, if you wait 2 hours, you can check and see and make sure that your water is the right temperature after that. And then again, make sure your fridge and your freezer are at the right temperature. Great way to save money and make sure your food stays fresh long-term. Cool. So next thing we're going to talk about is tightening up your home. We'll start by spending a minute on drafts. So Colleen had a great image of some of the common places that folks have drafts in their house. I've got a list here as well that are common places to look and see. So door and window frames, electrical outlets and switch plates are common, baseboards, fireplace dampers, attic hatches, pet doors, where your cable or old school phone lines come into your house, where there's vents or fans, all common places to have drafts. And there's a couple ways that you can actually test for drafts in your house yourself. You can buy a draft detector from a hardware store, and that's definitely a good option. Folks will also use incense or candles to detect them. You want to be obviously careful taking anything that's burning around your house, but you can look and see the way that the flame flickers or the way that the smoke moves to get an idea of where drafts are coming into your house. Once you've identified where the drafts are, there's a set of them that you can deal with yourself. And there's a couple different tools to keep in mind for this. So for cracks that are less than 1/4 inch, caulk is a great choice. For cracks that are between 1/4 inch and 3 inches, spray foam can be a good option. For doors, draft stoppers or weather stripping can work well. Aluminum tape can be great for leaky ducts. And then there's special made switch and outlet sealers if you've got leaks around your outlets or around your switches. And there are a ton of instructional videos that you can look up online and you can describe exactly what your windows or house or cracks look like to be able to get a good idea of the best way to deal with your situation using these different materials. And once you buy something, you should make sure to read the safety warnings and the instructions before beginning and familiarize yourself with the process before you actually start. Spray foam is one of the trickier ones to get right. So definitely watch a couple of videos before you dive in on that one, just to make sure that you don't have to do it over again and you get it right the first time. Cool. Next thing we're going to talk about is windows. So obviously having good windows in your house is great, but they are expensive. So sometimes you got to do something else in the meantime. Plastic window insulation kits are a great way to help if you've got windows that are letting a lot of heat out of your house. The way that you do this is you actually buy them and you seal them onto the frame, and it creates a couple inches of airspace between the window and where that sheet of plastic is. It still makes it so you can get light in the winter, which is really nice. My sister-in-law and my brother did this in their house last winter, and it was pretty miraculous standing by those windows before and after they did it with how big the change was. So definitely recommend those. Curtains are another really great option, the thick kind. This can be good if you've got glass doors that obviously need to be able to open. Another good thing to do with curtains is if you have an entryway or a mudway or a mudroom that doesn't have a door between that and the main house, putting up a curtain in between can make a really big difference for when folks are coming in and out of your house. Next thing is pipes. You can get foam insulation that you wrap around your hot water pipes. This can help make it so that your water stays warm on the way from the hot water heater to your taps. So you can really have it at that 120 degrees. This also can make it so that your pipes have are a little bit tougher if the power goes out before they freeze. Have an extra layer of defense there. Colleen mentioned this as well, but having low flow faucets is a great way to reduce your energy use for heating up hot water because it makes it so you're only getting the hot water that you actually need. So that can be great. And then obviously lights are another thing that are good to make sure that you've got efficient bulbs. I want to say a quick thing about safety, especially for closing up drafts. So airflow is not always a bad thing. It can do really healthy things for your home as well. And when you seal stuff up, you want to make sure that you're not causing too much humidity or moisture to build up in areas. So you want to check and be cautious about that. Read the instructions. If you see any signs of mold, deal with that stuff right away. The other thing is when you tighten up your house, it makes it so if you do have a carbon monoxide leak, it will build up faster. So you should make sure that your carbon monoxide detectors are not expired, that they're in all the rooms that they need to be in, and that they've got good batteries. I take this really seriously. There was a girl who I went to high school with, and her husband were firefighters, and they died from a carbon monoxide leak. So it happens, it's real. Make sure that you've got the right ones in place. Very important. We're going to go on to next into habits as sort of the next thing that you can do yourself. Something generally just to say about habits is that it takes time to develop them and to do them consistently. So don't worry about doing everything on this list right away. Pick a couple, work on them, then you can come back and add a couple more later on. That's totally fine. There's some quippy ways to remember it, and I'll go into detail on some of these. The first thing is to heat your body, not your house. So if you make it so that sweaters, bathrobes, house slippers, having cozy blankets on your sofa and your couch are really common in your household, that'll help make sure that everyone feels cozy while you keep your house at a lower temperature. Another one is if you have a tendency to get cold at night or when you first get into bed, a hot water bottle is a great way to make sure that your bed is cozy and warm without wasting energy heating your whole house. So just heat the space that you're going to be in. Next thing is that it can be a great idea to wash your clothes in cold water. Most detergents nowadays do just fine in cold water. It'll save you money and it will save some wear and tear on your clothes as well. The only thing that really needs to be washed in hot water are really dirty things like cloth diapers, but most clothes and stuff like that, totally fine to do it in cold water. Next thing is dryers. So dryers are very energy intensive. Totally awesome if you can get a heat pump dryer. But some of the things that you can do before that is hang dry if you can sometimes. Otherwise, you can add an extra spin cycle onto your washing machine. It'll wring out more water, which will reduce drying time. Another fun, really easy trick is if you add a dry towel in with your clothes while they are drying, it can reduce drying time up to 15 minutes, which is really cool. And then the last one is just to avoid over drying clothes generally. So figure out how long it actually takes for a load to dry, and then don't have it be spinning around in there for an extra 15 minutes. Pull it out once stuff is done. Another reminder from what Colleen said, make sure that you keep your dryer the lint traps clean. And this is both the dryer, the one that's on your dryer itself and where it exits your house. If you don't, it can make it so humidity builds up, will make it so your clothes will dry a lot more slowly. And it's also a fire hazard, so make sure that those stay clean. Same thing with the filters on your heating systems. There's all sorts of different options there in different styles, but make sure that they're staying clean. It will help your cycles go more efficiently, and then also improve the air quality in your home. Next thing is to match the cooking to the meal. So ovens use a lot of energy, and that's fine if you're making a lot of food, but if you have some other appliances and you're making smaller batches of food, using toaster ovens, air fryers, microwaves, or stovetop for smaller meals is more efficient. The other way to think about this is that if you're going to turn on your oven, maximize it. So if you're roasting vegetables for dinner one night and you're planning on making a squash soup the following night, throw that squash in at the same time, as that way you're just using your oven once and you're really maximizing it. You can also think about this with your meal planning. So if you are having a dinner that goes into the oven, like a casserole one night, and you also have a baked dessert that you want to do at some point, put them on the same night so that you're really maximizing that oven use. The final thing, I'm going to reiterate what Colleen said around energy vampires. This always baffles me, but in most people's home, they can reduce their electricity bill somewhere between 10 and 20% if they get rid of the energy vampires in their home. So it's really a huge amount. What you want to look for is these cords that have sort of these bigger block chargers or these transformers. But anything that's like phones, DVD players, things that can be turned on via remote or your voice, standby coffee makers, video game consoles, cable satellite boxes, devices with standby light or clock, all of those are pulling energy when you're not actually using them. You can just unplug them. It is often easier for folks to use power strips that you can just click the button for, but you have to actually remember to click the button and turn them off. So those are the main DIY tips that I've got for both weatherizing your home and making it more efficient. We're going to go ahead and dive into some Q&A now. So I'm going to stop sharing and then we'll start doing that piece of it. Okay, so we had a couple questions about that came in from our stream. So I'm going to start with those. The first one is just, what does it actually entail to get new insulation added to your home? Like, what does that look like?
I'll take a stab at it and then Ethan can maybe correct. Unfortunately, the answer to this is that it depends, right? So like, where is it that you're adding insulation? You know, where do you need it? You know, what insulation do you already have? Are you replacing? Are you just adding? One of the more common insulations that I know about that gets done is in the attic. And so that tends to be a little bit easier, right? Like, especially if you have, you know, access to the attic, then that's a little bit more straightforward, like you're blowing in cellulose or adding foam or whatever that is. That tends to be a little bit more straightforward. Or maybe if you have access to like a basement or crawl space and you're putting in foam along the foundation to prevent that heat loss. You know, if you're talking about more inside of the walls, obviously that's going to be a lot more involved. So kind of the answer to that is it depends. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Ethan.
Yeah, that pretty much covers it. I mean, obviously, you know, your attic insulation is number one because you lose heat straight in your attic through your roof. So making sure you've got quality, you know, the right thickness, whether that's cellulose blown in. Also sealing, because your interior walls will vent right up to your roof too. So sealing any of your outlets or, you know, penetrations in your interior walls helps. And then also you can insulate your basement, you know, your basement walls that often almost, you know, new houses all have that. Some old houses don't. If you've got an uninsulated basement, you can be losing heat down there too. But in your walls, that's a big project. You're very rarely ever going to re-insulate your walls. So.
Well, very helpful. And then one other question from the stream was, what does getting improved insulation, or I just did that one. How much do you, so it was a question about with new windows, how much is it actually worth spending, or like how good of quality is it worth going, which is obviously a complicated question. Folks should also feel free to add other questions into the chat and the Q&A feature as well.
I'll take that one because it's a question we get a lot, and through replacing windows is very rarely high on your, you know, improvement score. It is it is very rarely worth the effort unless, like Colleen said, you have like old single pane windows. You're often going to get a lot of benefits by recaulking, resealing around the outside. If you've got, there's companies that can come and re-vacuum seal them, they can fix cracks. I don't have like a hard dollar amount because it is very variable, but unless you've got very old, very leaky windows, you're going to get a lot of benefits from just caulking, sealing, insulating, doing the window film. You're going to get most of your benefits from that from a lot less cost. So, Colleen, if you had anything.
Yeah, same thing. Unless you have a bunch of single pane windows, then generally improvement is going to be, but it is very variable.
And if you're handy, you can do it yourself. That's also different. If you can go buy them and replace them yourself, then it makes more sense. But if you're paying somebody to install them, if you just want new windows, that's totally fine. But they're not really going to pay for themselves as much as a lot of people think they would.
Well, that is super helpful. And then Ethan, I'm going to have you answer this question that was in the Q&A out loud. So someone asked, does getting an energy rating have a cost associated with it?
It does. Right now they're running, I think, about 500. It's up to the individual raters. They charge, but they all tend to be the same. I meant to point out, but I forgot that you can get 150 tax credit for one right now. We are working in the state rebate program we ran before. You would get your home energy rating reimbursed as part of your final rebate. That is not specifically in this DOE one, but we're trying to make sure so that, include it so that, sort of low income folks can get an energy rating, so they don't have to come out of pocket that money before they can even get in the program. So we're hoping to include that, working on including that, but it does have a cost. And if you just kind of want one, probably looking at about $500. So.
And then another one was for the rebate programs that are not point of sale and you have to have the money up front. Do you know if there's going to be any financing options that are specific to that have low interest rates or no interest rates or anything like that to help folks who are struggling to pull that money together?
Possibly. That's another one. So we've got the full guidance, but a lot of it is just kind of details on what's included and what's not included, not so much on how to run it. Looks like they're going to allow us to use some of our admin money to do stuff like that. It's the same thing with paying for the assessments up front. So we are trying to figure out how we can do a thing to help lower income families cover those costs, and whether that the other thing that is coming out is there is green bank legislation for this next upcoming legislative session, and if that passes, fingers crossed, that would be an excellent place for a program like that, for some low green financing, low interest rate financing to come from. So hopefully, I guess is what I could say. Hopefully there will be programs for that.
Well, okay, great. Checking to see if we've got any other questions that we haven't made it to. Okay. I think that we've got them all. So just a couple follow-up points. If any other questions occur to you, please feel free to email me and I will try my best to get you answers. There will be a recording of this webinar that I'll make available as soon as I finish processing things. And along with that, I'll have a frequently asked questions document that will have all of the links that folks shared, so that people will have a place where that's all available in the same location if you need to go back to anything later. And then just a couple other things. This is the third in our series of clean energy home webinars. The first one was on heat pumps. So on our website, there's some great information about heat pumps and how to figure out whether it's right for your home, how they work, what it entails, all the different pieces of it. We also did one on solar panels and storage, and that's also available on our website. And then coming up probably sometime next month, I've got to get it specifically on the calendar. We'll do one on electric vehicles. And specifically, we'll talk about the things that impact people in Alaska. So what are the ones that work well in the snow, and how do they work with the different temperatures, and what's available here, and what ones can you get the right snow tires for, and all of those kinds of things that are a little bit more specific to us. I really appreciate you all taking some time to chat with us on Tuesday, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. And Colleen and Ethan, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for setting it up. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Okay, bye everyone. Happy Tuesday.